Welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! History with Joe Giorlando. In today's video, I'm going to be playing against Alex Lisgath, formerly known as Lolly, in the summer of 2012 format. So instead of talking about Long Beach in 2012, where Priority was around and he'd absolutely destroyed me with Windup Zen Maddie, instead we're going to play the national season. So we're looking at a time period where now suddenly Effect Veiler can stop Rescue Rabbit. Priority is no longer a thing. I've decided to build my trusty Dino-Rabbit deck. I've elected not to main deck Macro Cosmos. This isn't necessarily because I don't think Alex would run Inzectors. This is honestly me going back in time and trying to reflect on why I had such a bad mirror match. I did pretty well against Inzectors during that format, and I think the way my deck is currently tuned, it can still do pretty well against Inzectors and then just side the Macro Cosmos. If you watched my deck profile on Rabbit, you may have heard me talk about how I really wish I could have come up with a way to win the mirror match, and I'm trying something in the side deck. I have no idea if he's actually going to run Rabbit, but my little combo package here is to incorporate 2 copies of Curse Seal of the Forbidden Soul of all cards and Safe Zone in the side deck. The idea here is to hopefully stall out against my opponent with a monster if they open a really good hand, and then use something like Curse Seal to protect against MST. In theory, the only ways to deal with the safe zone are going to be Heavy Storm and MST, and if I can Curse Seal and MST, now they're down just to 1 out, and then I have my own Solemn, Starlight Road, and other things like that to worry about Heavy Storm. You might be able to lock them out with these 2 heading into the side deck games against the mirror match. And then I've even put a Return from the Different Dimension in my side deck. Main decking the Black Luster Soldier, already having the Rabbit, and then playing against Prison and Bottomless. I was trying to think of cards that could just totally shift the game out of nowhere. Return from the Different Dimension seemed like it would be a reasonable option. So we'll see what Alex is running. As I just stated, I'm running, of course, Dino-Rabbit, this time without Macro Cosmos. If it's a mirror match, I'll be really interested to see what the side deck looks like. If it's not, we'll just have a good match and approach it from there. Let's see if I win the all-important die roll. This is still a point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history where you draw 6 cards. That would not change for a few formats. All right, here we go. We won the die roll. Competitive die roll. Obviously, we'll be going first. We draw 6 cards. No reason to go second. Obviously, you want to see a hand with Rabbit. This is still a pretty reasonable hand. Some trap cards. Can't complain about trap cards. Can't complain about a hand trap. All right, let's consider here some of our options. So in terms of sequencing your traps, there's an interesting question about Solemn Warning and Torrential Tribute in terms of the sequencing here. You could set both, but that seems a little unnecessary with the Veiler as protection. If he goes Heavy Storm or MST plus combo, at least I have the Veiler to stop presumably whatever it is that he could be doing. In terms of sequencing, one of the main options that you have here is to summon one of the dinosaurs and set a trap as protection, and then try to summon another dinosaur on the next turn. I would consider doing that if I didn't have Tour Guide. Because I have Tour Guide, I think what I'm going to do is Tour Guide for Sangan and set Torrential, and then leave Solemn Warning in my hand. That way, if that play gets disrupted on the following, then I can start to try and make a Sabersaurus plus Warning play, and try and set up Logi or Dolka on turns 3 and 4. I just think Tour Guide Get Sang and set Torrential is the best use of these cards. If I go Tour Guide Get Sang and set Warning, and he breaks that board, then I'm looking at Dinosaur, Torrential, and those don't really work well together. I could even see a universe where, let's say he goes MST, attack with Thunder King over the Sangan, where maybe I can crash the Sabersaurus and then set the Warning, and then maybe build up a board following that. Warning just does a better job congoing with Guaiba and Sabersaurus than Torrential does, so we'll start with Tour Guide. Maybe this will get hit by Veiler. Let's see what he does. All right, he says it's good. I'm going to get Sangan, and I'm going to put in attack mode. I think attack mode is correct, and then I'm going to set the Torrential, and then just pass the turn. Again, Heavy Storm is legal in this format. I'm not going to set both back rows. I sort of have a second push on the following turn with Warning plus some of these. In a perfect world, maybe even my Guaiba can attack over something, but this is a pretty threatening opening turn. I didn't mention it previously, but the Sangan can search Rescue Rabbit, obviously. So we'll see what he does. In the worst case scenario, he does go MST or Heavy plus Thunder King. Thunder King was mained in quite a few different decks. He could be running Hero Beat. He could be running, honestly, Rabbit sometimes main Thunder King. I wasn't a fan of it, but people did it. Sometimes people run it in some of the other decks as well. Maybe a teched Thunder King in windups of all things. So we'll see what he ends up doing. Alex is known for running windups. Obviously, in our previous match, he ran windups against my Hero Beat deck. So he could very easily have that type of openings. This is an interesting decision point here. I don't really see the point in torrentialing, and this isn't threatening enough for me to Veiler. Now, you might be looking at this and saying, well, why not Veiler? You attack over Gwaiba. Well, I also could just crash Sangan into whatever he gets here and then search Rabbit that way. I think I'm in a pretty reasonable position by just holding on to my Veiler. In this format, I like to hold Veiler until it's absolutely game-breaking, and just seeing this tour guide, I'm not convinced that it's at that point yet. Yeah, I don't have to worry about him, for example, going into Zen Mains and crashing into one of my monsters. He could attack over a monster, but he can't crash. So at this current point, totally fine. Not going to torrential here. All right, so he's going to do some crashing plays. So he's going to crash his Sangan into my tour guide and presumably search his own hand trap, probably Effect Veiler. That's okay, though, because I can summon the Gwaiba and attack his tour guide. Oh, Wind-Up Shark. Okay, so he is running, of course, a combo deck, Wind-Ups, as we sort of alluded to earlier. So if he's doing that, he definitely can stop Rescue Rabbit, because it's on board, my Crash of Sangan, Search Rabbit. So yeah, he's going to set 2 back rows. Presumably one of these is going to be... That's a good draw, obviously. Presumably one of these is going to be something like Solemn Warning, or maybe even potentially Dimensional Prison, if he's choosing to run that. So here I have some options. I have, obviously, the option of just jamming Rabbit. I don't really like that idea. I'm the type of person that with this deck, I like Rabbit to be the very last thing that I do. So I'm going to hold Rabbit as long as possible. He could have Call of the Haunted. That's a card that he could presumably set. He set 2 back rows. The reason I'm commenting on Call of the Haunted is one Sangan's in the graveyard. That's a pretty safe set. I think the card that pressures him the most is Gwaiba, because he might be assuming that with his current board state, he can rely on a D-Prison to stop the Sangan. And if I were to summon Dirac Gwaiba, then I would have 2 monsters on the board that are pretty threatening. The Gwaiba attack itself threatens a Exceed monster like Lagia or Doka. And if he chooses to D-Prison there, and I could still crash, and then if I crashed, I might actually search another Effect Veiler of all things, or maybe I'd search Rabbit. But I think summoning Gwaiba is probably the safest bet. I think it's going to put him in an awkward position. He could Torrential here too, but that's pretty reasonable. I'm fine with that. All right. So he says, does he want to use the warning here? It's good. Okay. So I think there's a reasonable chance that I'm going to hit by D-Prison here, or Book of Moon potentially. We'll see which of the two. Okay, Fiendish Chain. Yeah, that was another option. I don't mind that at all. Now I have a Gwaiba on the board, and I'm threatening a normal summon of a Sabersource. But here I'll attack with the Sangan. This could get hit by D-Prison. All right, sweet. So the Sangan effect resolves. Here we have some options. We could search a second Effect Veiler. I think that's actually a pretty reasonable search. Also, just searching Rescue Rabbit's obviously pretty good. I could search Tour Guide to combo with my Rabbit in hand. If I get my Rabbit effect off, that Tour Guide is obviously pretty good. I could just search another Rabbit. The fact that he Fiendish Chain there, I'm trying to get a read on what that face down might be. What's important to note here is he was willing to do that when he knew I just had Sangan on board. So that's an interesting thing to consider. What could this be if he was confident that having Sangan there was reasonable? This could still be warning, and he's thinking that he'll be able to warning the Rabbit on the following turn. I think stocking up on Rabbit might be the best way of going about doing this, because there's a pretty reasonable chance that I end up using Torrential on the following turn. You know, what's interesting is if I search second Effect Veiler, I'd be confident setting the warning, and if this is Pro Storm, the double Effect Veiler might catch him off guard, and then my Gwaiba might be able to attack freely over something, and then I'd have Rabbit in my hand also. I think it's a little unorthodox, but I might search an Effect Veiler here. I feel like him using Heavy Storm is one of the things that I'm most afraid of. And I feel like having Gwaiba on the field is actually pretty threatening, relatively speaking. Because then I can set the second warning, or the second trap, the warning with the Torrential. And then no matter what, I can summon the Sabersource next turn and threaten an Exceed monster that way. We know we have Shark in hand, so we might go Magician Shark. And I'd have warning. Yeah, I think I'm going to search Effect Veiler. I think I have 2 normal summons already with the Rabbit and the Sabersource. I don't really want to add a third normal summon to my hand when I think I can actually sequence things in a way where I'm in pretty good shape. Okay, I think this summon is probably fine. I can warning this. The risk, though, if he summons Shark... No, this is good. This is good. Yep. What I'm going to do is I'm going to warning the Magician effect. And then I'm going to... Yeah, I'm going to warning the Magician effect. That way he leaves Shark on the board. Yep. That's good. Obviously, now I know my Gwaib is not going through, but that's totally reasonable. Obviously, he didn't activate Heavy Storm. So on that, that's where I'm going to activate the Solemn Warning. That way he has a Shark just left on board. So he knew I had Effect Veiler. Now, obviously, that hopefully ends up being a pretty good sequencing. All right, perfect. We'll draw a normal. Normal is actually totally reasonable right now. I'm just going to summon this normal and threaten the first Exceed monster. We'll obviously summon the Sabersaurus because it has less attack. So he's going to think. He might Torrential here. It's a somewhat painful Torrential. It's a -1 Torrential. But he might just be forced to do it nevertheless. What I mean by -1 is it's inconvenient. If this is Call, which is something that we considered. Now, granted, he could have called the Magician and then used Magician's effect again by changing the level of Shark and then getting another monster out of the deck. So if this was Call the Haunted that whole time, or so he's going to Book of Moon the Sabersaurus. This is fine. One of the things that I love with Dino-Rabbit is you just grind the back rows. That's how you play this deck. And notice I've just kept the rabbit in my hand this whole time. You let the rabbit be the card that goes over the top. The fact that he only had Book of Moon set makes it less like, oh, that's fine. Yep, that's totally fine. I still have the Veilers, so hopefully I'm okay with the Veilers. We'll see. Yep, he summons the Rat. Rat's a tough one. Let me think here. So the Rat's annoying because he can go into a monster with these two. I might have to double Veiler, where I Veiler the Rat and then I Veiler the Zenmatti. If that were to be the case, I would be in decent shape because I'd be able to flip the Cabazals, go into an Exceed monster, and then summon the Rabbit and go into another one. And if these are just two monsters in hand, which is a pretty reasonable chance because he set just Book of Moon on that previous turn. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do here is Veiler this. He's going to make this level 3, go into a Zenmatti. I Veiler that. He has to kill the Cabazals with a Zenmatti on the board, which is obviously not good. Theoretically impossible unless he has something like Reborn. Now, if he has Reborn at the end of all of this, like, yeah, it just sort of is what it is. And he very easily could. Reborn is the type of card that he wouldn't have previously set. But if he had Reborn, would he have used it on the previous turn to just get back the Magician? There's a reasonable chance the answer to that is yes, unless he drew MST this turn, and now he's confident that that play is going to go through. I'm just going to Veiler this. I'm going to double Veiler. He needs to have specific one-ofs to make this work. Yep. Yep. So what's actually awesome here, now that I'm thinking about it, if he were to ditch Rat in Reborn Rat, the Reborn Rat doesn't do anything. It can just bring back Magician. If he ditches the Shark, then he has nothing really good to go target. So this second Veiler is actually really good. Reborn is really not a good out right now. There's really no way for him to get the Zenmatti off the board. So we're in pretty good shape here. Even if he has Monster Reborn, it's not that good. He can't even attack over my face down here. All right, so that's okay. He has set a back row, but again, as I alluded to, we'll be able to flip the Cabazals, and this threatens a response here. He needs to do something. Oh, sorry. We'll see what he does. It's good. All right, so this is the first. The first one we're definitely going to go into Logia. No reason to do anything else. It's good. All right, now we summon a Rabbit. And we banish Rabbit. We're going to get double Cabazals. It's obvious, but if you never played this format, you obviously get the lower attack monster. So we're going to get double Cabazals. Here, we're not going to go into anything else. We're just going to attack over the Zenmatti and then inflict the most amount of damage. And then main phase 2, I might go into another Logia, but I'm going to have to think about it a little bit. We'll see if he uses something like Deep Prison or Mirror Force right now. We'll attack with the Cabazals and then the Logia. And then main phase 2. All right, let's see. He has 3 total cards. The worst case scenario is if he can bait out the Logia and then play Dark Hole. And then play Monster Reborn. But he could also have Call of the Haunted set. That is one of the cards that he could have set. And he would have had to have drawn it. Like I said, if you have Call of the Haunted set and you have something like Sangan, there's basically no reason not to just set it. And because he had access to Rat, it's presumable that if he had Call of the Haunted the whole time, that he would have just had it set. Because with Call of the Haunted, Rat is a really good follow-up. They respond to the Rat, you Call the Haunted it back. So, this might be a Call of the Haunted that he just drew. Pretty good chance it's not Torrential, just what a Torrential does. He didn't know I have that rabbit, right? I Sanganed the second Veiler. I didn't Sangan out the rabbit. So it's not Torrential. It could be a Fiendish Chain. Fiendish Chain doesn't do anything to that flip summon of a Cabazals. So that's an interesting question. If this is Fiendish Chain, what's the worst thing that can happen? Let's say he draws and summons something like Rat. What am I worried about? I might just go double Logia here. Because the cards that I'm worried about are just go Logia Doka. If he plays Dark Hole, I have to negate with Logia, and then he already used Book of Moon, correct? Yeah. Would he have Dark Hold that? He might have actually just Dark Hold on the play where he had Zenmatti in defense mode because he knew I was threatening a Logia. So it's actually more than likely the case that if he had Dark Hole, he would have used it on that previous turn. Because most of the outs right now that I'm worried about involve Dark Hole, I'm just going to go into this Dolka. What I was worried about is if he goes Dark Hole and I chain Logia effect, he could chain the Fiendish Chain and then blow up my board and then activate a monster effect. And the problem with monster effects is it actually discards my hand. So let's see. He needs a very specific sequence of cards, and I think it's pretty reasonable that he didn't have them during some of the previous turns. That's a good start. Now it's almost a guarantee that I'm going to win here because I have the tour guide. But we'll see. Like if he doesn't set this, then the game is probably over. This is 37 direct. The reason I'm commenting that is if he activates... Yeah, of course that's good. Is he going to summon Shark? If he summons Shark, I feel like the game is over. Oh, man. Okay. I'm going to detach. So he did have Dark Hole that whole time. All right. All right. Let's see here. Oh, that was the worst draw. Now I can't rabbit. Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What horrible, horrible luck there. Wow. Okay. Well, let's reflect on what we can do because that happened. If I were to attack and he activates the effect of Wind Up Rabbit, I can use Dolka to negate it. I could also let it happen and then Tour Guide Leviair to my own side of the field, but that's a little bit gimmicky and not necessarily the best thing to do. If he's running Mirror Force, let's see here. I could just attack with the Logia first and then see what happens, because if this is Deprison, obviously that's not ideal. 15. I could just go for game too, that it's theoretically on the board. He could have Torrential. You know, having this in his hand was pretty reasonable. And then he could have drawn Torrential and feel like this is the way to go, because he used that Dark Hole so that this could actually resolve this turn. So there's a pretty reasonable chance that it's actually Torrential set. And if it's Torrential set, I don't feel too bad, because he's still in a position where he needs to top deck out of this. He could summon another level 3 and then go into Acid Golem, which is a little awkward. So there's definitely something to consider there with Acid Golem. Yeah, I'm going to just play around the Mirror Force, because if this is Prison, he can prison this Logia. Okay. Yeah, we're going to detach the Cabazals on that. And it kills it. And the attack continues for 13, drops him from 39 to 15. We go to main phase 2. He already used his Dark Hole. I'm going to do something which sounds awkward, but I'm going to set Saber Source. And I'm going to pass. He needs something like Rat plus Reborn right now. If this was Fiendish Chain, he would have activated. That was another somewhat of a concern, but if this was Fiendish Chain, I then could Tour Guide and take his Rabbit. All right. All right. Pretty good. So we'll draw. More rabbits. Okay. So here I can just go for game. I can flip the Saber Source, and if he has Torrential, he has to activate it. If it's not Torrential, then he just probably loses because it didn't stop the previous attack. So there's a pretty reasonable chance that it's going to be unable to do it here. So let's give him the option of playing Torrential Tribute. He probably feels like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I Torrential, I lose. If I don't Torrential, I lose. Because this is probably something like a wind-up Magician. On the off chance that he's main decking, even if it is, honestly, Snowman Eater, it doesn't matter if I attack with Saber Source first. I guess I'll just attack with the Logia first, because it's still enough damage, but we'll see what it is. Okay, and then attack directly for game. I guess the problem... This is going to be Call of the Haunted, actually. And this is going to deal less damage. Okay, he just admits defeat. Never mind. All right, well, that was awkward there towards the end. I feel like we sculpted the game really well. Where I had the Rabbit that went over the top, and I had the Tour Guide for the follow-up, and then I drew that extra normal monster, which made things really awkward there towards the end. I could have just made way more of an aggressive push and summoned the Tour Guide with the Logia negation up when he has just one back row and gone into another Evolzar, have the 3 Evolzar field. And at that point, I probably would just win the game. So it got really awkward when I drew that extra Saber Source there, but ended up working out. In terms of the side deck, let's see here. So Soul Taker is not that great in this matchup. I don't think Deep Prisons are very good. I'm putting in the Max C's because now my opponent's going to have the opportunity to hand loop me going first. Other things to consider, I like the MST because some of these games definitely devolve into a grindy matchup where they're using Factory. I didn't see Factory in that game, but obviously it's possible. Rabbit stay in, Tour Guide stay in, obviously the Sangin, the Guaibas are incredible, the normal summons are necessary, the Veiler is necessary, as you saw there, it absolutely won me that game. I actually never really played Blockluster Soldier and Rabbit when I ran Rabbit, so I'm giving this a try. Seems good, you have the Veiler, you also have the... Where is it at? Did I not put it in here? I actually forgot to put in Giga Brilliant. That's sort of funny. Well, you do have Giga Brilliant, and the fact that I didn't put it in there was a mistake. I was looking at deck list and they didn't have BLS in it. So that should be in the extra deck. That's a mistake. But the idea is you go Tour Guide, get Sangin, go into Giga Brilliant, and then there's your Light and Dark. It's not that big of a deal because the Sangin can just search Veiler. Either way, though, that's why that's in there. The Lance is a little bit questionable. We saw him have Fiendish Chain, so there is a little bit of a consideration there. Level limits were not for this matchup. Return's a little gimmicky. I almost want to put it in just to see what it's like, but it's a little bit gimmicky. I think I'll just keep it the way it is. I only really have the hand traps. The warnings are great, as you saw. Torrential's great. Bottomless is pretty good. It stops Zenmatti now, unlike the first video where we played against windups. Compulse is actually partially for this deck. It gives me basically 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 if you consider Judgment, ways of just stopping. 10 if you consider Book of Moon, the Zenmatti summon. We saw he had MSTs, so he'll keep those in. There's no reason to really put in Safe Zone. Return's an interesting one. Return's just kind of a game-shifting card. I'm not going to put it in, though. We'll just keep it like this. We have 4 hand traps. His deck can loop really easy on turn 1. We'll see what happens. Solid, reasonable, well-structured hand. No normals, which is nice. 1 Effect Veiler, obviously pretty good. Tour Guide, I have a reasonable monster. MST to clear a back row. Solid. I mean, this is a good hand. It's not a perfect hand. Obviously, there's way more explosive combinations of cards. I could have Guaiba, which is great with Lance. Yep. Yeah, and then he declares Shark. Okay, it's been a long time since I recall what to do here. So if I Effect Veiler the Magician, he just goes into a rank 4. All right, so I'm going to Veiler the Magician here. I think that's what you're supposed to do. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've seen the sequence and recall exactly what to do, but I think this is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, he just goes into the rank 4. Probably Utopia. That's presumably the best. Maestro's not the worst either, but probably Utopia. Okay, he isn't going to go into Maestro. All right, that's fair. So this Book of Moon's one of my monsters, and then he can detach in order to protect it when it would be destroyed. 2 back rows is a little bit annoying. Did not want to see 2 back rows, unless I draw heavy. Well, definitely didn't want to draw normal. The problem with seeing the 2 back rows is I really want this tour guide to go off. I could blind MST, or I could just summon the tour guide and activate the effect. I think it actually is probably better to just summon the tour guide, because if he has Fiendish Chain, I can just chain the MST. So we'll see what happens here. You know, it's opposed to blind MSTing, which I'm not really a huge fan of. I could go into Tempo. That used to be a pretty sweet card, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Tempo would detach both of these, then I could attack over it. I feel like I'm just fine getting Rabbit or Sangan, though, because Sangan can eventually search Rabbit, and I can set all 3 of my traps, and I'm in pretty good shape. The risk in getting Sangan, though, is he could theoretically summon Thunder King if he sided those in. I don't think Thunder King is the best card against my deck, so I personally wouldn't, but I wouldn't be shocked if I do see that. Yeah, I think I get Sangan here. And then the question is, what does he do? The fact that he got Maestro makes it more likely that he has Torrential Tribute set, so that is something to consider with the fact that he got Maestro. Maestro's probably just better than Utopia anyway. If I go into Tempo, you detach 1, and then it's only once per turn. I guess I should recall that. I'm just going to set all 3 of my back rows and pass. I think I'm safe just setting all my back rows here. One of the main reasons you set all your back rows in this format against this deck is so that they do not get discarded to Hunter. You would need to have some very particular cards to Hunter me from here, but definitely something to consider. If he summons Thunder King, there's a universe where I Judgment it. Yeah, this is fine. He's going to probably attack the Tour Guide. Yep, not Judgmenting this. Absolutely not. Yep, I'll take the 400. He's not attacking my Sangan. He doesn't want to give me a free search. All right, we'll draw. Warning's a decent draw. Summoning the Cabazals doesn't do anything here. If I summon the Cabazals, he can just, 1, banish the Wind-Up Rabbit with its effect, and 2, just attack over it with Maestro. There is a consideration for setting it. If I were to set it, it would give me the opportunity to draw into another monster, another dinosaur, and if I were to do that, I could normal summon it and then threaten an Exceed monster. He can't attack over currently with Wind-Up Rabbit, and if he were to shift the Maestro to attack mode, I could just crash the Sangan, and he probably doesn't want me to do that. So setting the Sabersaurus, or rather the Cabazals, is actually pretty safe. I set normal monsters a lot with this deck. He's going to be afraid of Deep Prison. He might even be afraid to a lesser extent of Snowman Eater, though not by a ton. I wouldn't often side Snowman against this deck. And if he reads this to be Cabazals, I actually really don't mind offering the crash with the Sangan. So we'll see what ends up happening here. All right, yep. He could attack the face down just to see what it is. Yeah, this is totally reasonable. He's going to leave the Maestro in defense mode, and now he'll see what it is. But again, if he puts this to attack mode in order to make that play, I'll be able to crash the Sangan. All right, so he sets a monster. Could be his own Sangan. Okay, Lance isn't the best card. So it could be his own Sangan. I don't envision it being it could be Magician. It could also be Snowman Eater. Snowman Eater itself was a good card to side deck against Rabbit. So it's possible that this is Snowman Eater. If that is Snowman Eater, I would prefer him flip summon it. That way Guaiba is a live draw. Currently, I actually had 8 live draws. Any dinosaur in my deck right now would have been incredible. Any of the 5 remaining normals or Guaiba itself, because then I could have threatened an Exceed monster here and then left the Sangan on the board. As it currently stands, I'm just going to continue the current game state. What I think is probably going to happen on the following turn is he's going to flip this to kill the Cabazals. I'm going to assume he's going to be unwilling to trade the Maestroke for a Dimensional Prison. That just doesn't seem like a great trade on his side. I think I am going to set this Forbidden Lance. The reason, I mean, he could Heavy Judgment me, yes, the 2 1-ups, but there's a way higher chance that he hand loops this Lance out of my hand than he has Heavy Storm plus Solemn Judgment. Plus, if I were to draw a spell or trap that I wanted to use, I could just MST a back row blindly. I'm just going to set this Lance and pass. Maybe he MSTs end phase? No? Okay. Ooh, okay, there's the Hunter. Sure. No reason to do anything to that. Maybe that was a reason to put the Kabazals into attack mode? So he's attacking the Sangan into that. Okay. So this is annoying because he can use these 2 to ditch whatever I search off of the Sangan. Maybe I should have warninged it. It didn't seem natural to warning it there, but now that I'm thinking about this more, it may have been correct to use the warning there. Yeah, that was definitely a misstep. All right, yep. I'll search. Do I search Rabbit? I don't think I actually search Rabbit. Well, I don't know. I'm trading Rabbit for his wind-up Rabbit for my Rescue Rabbit. But it's 1 less good draw in my deck. But it might actually not be the worst thing in the world to force him to use the wind-up Hunter. Otherwise, I search Veiler and he does it. He probably does it anyway if I search Veiler, though. No, he actually might not. He might go into something like Zen Maddie. I'm going to actually get the Rescue Rabbit here. It'll be interesting to see if he attacks fearing Deprison. No, he's not going to. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So now this is definitely Snowman Eater. He's deciding if he wants to flip it. From his perspective, it's probably safe to flip it. Yeah. I could warding this, but I don't really want to. I like the fact that I have so many live cards in my deck. That I'm going to warning. He played around Deprison by not attacking the Hunter, so I'm going to assume that he just continues to do that. All right, we'll end my turn from there. Oh, thinking and standby, okay. He's going to call the Haunted something. Nope. The amazing thing is here, I'm only 1 card away from really being able to take advantage. I've got all of these cards here to back up what he has going on. So the problem here is he just gets Hunter and then ditches the Rat. And then the 1-for-1 off the Max C doesn't really do anything. I'm just going to say okay to this. Yeah. I'm gonna still discard it. It forces him to do it that way. Oh, he's going to so do it on Rabbit. Okay, sure. So I get the draw. So if he doesn't actually discard from my hand, I'm in better shape because I drew Tour Guide. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. So now we'll draw. Haha. Our boy Guaiba. Okay. So now we are going to blind MST here. He doesn't have Sangan in the grave, so it's less likely that it's call, but it could still be something. We'll see what it ends up being. Hopefully it's not MST. Obviously, you don't want him to MST me back. I'd rather get as much card advantage through this as humanly possible. So he's going to chain MST on this. Sure. That's fine. Yep, that's perfect. Oh, wow, that worked out perfectly. And then we'll go to battle phase. And we will attack the Rabbit. If I attack the Rabbit, he activates effect, then I just attack the Rat. Here he's going to banish the Rat to the banished pile so that it comes back during his next standby phase. So it actually doesn't really matter which one I target. So I'm just going to attack this. He's going to use the rabbit. Yep. So I'll attack that. And I'll get a Guaiba. I'll go to main phase 2. So I can go into Dolka. The reason why I'd sort of have to go into Dolka is he can use his Maestroke effect to flip one of my attack position monsters into face down. If I were to get Lagia, he could do that. And I actually could just let Lagia resolve into defense and have the Solemn Judgment. But he's getting back this rat, so I sort of have to. On his turn, he can go Maestroke, negate, Maestroke, force a negation. And then he would actually have to use Maestroke's effect again to protect it from destroying itself. He may or may not choose to do that. If I were to put Lagia in defense mode, there's also a discussion for that also, as well, but I don't think that's proper. I'm going to put the Dolka into attack mode like this, and then pass. We'll see what ends up happening here. Yep. The rat comes back. So now he's going to probably Maestroke, force the negation, use the rat, force the negation, and then normal summon, and then a Solemn Judgment that one, and hope that that's enough. But I really don't want to see a Soul Taker, or maybe even Dark Hole would be really annoying here. Yes, I have the Lance to protect the Dolka, but I had to put it into attack mode. I could have put it into defense mode, but then he just attacks over it. I guess then I could Lance it when it's in attack mode. I don't think that's... All right, so we're going to negate that. Yep, and then he protects it. That's what that second detachment. And now he's probably going to use this rat. Yep. And I assume, yeah, on Rabbit, I'm going to assume that I'm supposed to just negate this. And then he's going to normal summon another one, and I Solemn Judgment it. And then I summon my Tour Guide, and hopefully that goes over the top. Or I could just start Rabbit off the top. Yeah. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What I'm doing right now is considering the possibility of him having Pot of Avarice. I think I just Judgment this, though. If he has Reborn, then, you know, he's doing what he's supposed to do if he has Monster Reborn, which is whittle my back rows down. And it's a good chance he does. He's looking at his graveyard. Yeah, here comes the Reborn. Maybe I could have waited for the... What's it called? The Zenmati, but I think there's another possibility where he just floats the rabbit. Okay, he doesn't. Ooh, I don't know if that's live. Oh, it is live. Oh my gosh, all right. Well, that's cool. Let's see here. That's 3,000 damage. Plus 23 is 53. Plus 1,800 off of a Leviair that I could summon. 71 plus the Sangan that I could get back. Okay. Well, in case he has Effect Veiler, I'm going to summon the Tour Guide first. All right. We'll get a Tour Guide. And then we'll go Banish, Banish. Summon Black Luster Soldier. Go into Leviair. Detach for Sangan. And attack. I mean, does he have Gores in his deck? Probably not. Are we going to get there? Yeah, it's going to be a Lestroth, that's for sure. Ouch. Yeah, ouch is right. I think I played game 1 well. All things considered. I think game 2, I got a little sloppy there. The points of the game where I got a little sloppy was not using Solemn Warning with the Hunter on the board. It's just sort of one of those things you're like, oh, no, he's just going to go into Zenmati. I'll warning the Zenmati. That was the heuristic, the shortcut, the mental shortcut I was using. But that was actually wrong. Because I could attack over the Sangan, it made it really awkward. I ended up searching the rabbit to force him to do that, and it actually wasn't the worst trade of all time, but that was definitely a mistake. That was sort of a default, just, you summon Hunter, why would I warning that? That was definitely a mistake. And then another one was not using warning on the Eater. That was a little bit debatable. he flipped it and killed my monster and then went into the shark, and I ended up using it. It got rid of the shark. I think that may have actually been fine, just holding the warning there. But anyway, that was an interesting match. It's Joe Giorlando for Yu-Gi-Oh! History. Thanks for watching. Check back pretty soon. I'm going to be profiling windups and then other decks from the summer of 2012.